Hey guys, welcome back to the show, and on this episode I'm going to be talking about Without Warning. It's a sci-fi horror movie from 1980, and if you've never heard of it, you've probably heard of the movie it inspired, Predator. Without Warning had a budget of $150,000. Half of that went to actors Martin Landau and Jack Palance. It was shot in 3 weeks and was directed by Graydon Clark. The movie also features Cameron Mitchell and a young David Caruso, as well as Christopher S. Nelson, who some of you may remember from my Roller Boogie video. The poster for Without Warning is quite honestly one of my favorites that I've ever featured on this show. I mean, just look at it. This is fantastic. The colors, the artwork, I'd actually like to get a print of this. The movie is about an alien who hunts down any people who wander into its territory, because, you know, sometimes we all just need our space. I don't see anything wrong with that. The movie starts with a father and son on a hunting trip, which was clearly the father's idea because the son is like, "Dad, this sucks. I don't get to sleep in, and the water smells weird. And not the normal pollution smell, this is something else. And also, why does it always have to be like this?"
Like what, son?
I mean, we can never agree on anything.
We're like polar opposites. You have your gun collection, and I have my Pez dispenser collection, and we can't even agree on that. On the ride down here, I got this Chewbacca, and you keep trying to tell me what to do with it.
Load it.
No, I'm not going to load. I told you this. These are for displaying, not for dispensing. It wears out the mechanism. And you know what? I just got this R2-D2 as well. I'm not even going to take it out of the package now. So yeah, you can just suck on that. So the father isn't too happy about his son's failure to become a man, as he says, so he shoots right beside his head. And I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, holy crap, not only is that super dangerous, but that could damage his hearing. Well, that's just an old wives' tale. I mean, think about it. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, probably listened to super loud music growing up. We probably had a gun or two go off right by our heads at some point. And, I mean, look at how we all turned out. Perfectly fine. So the dad goes off by himself while the son sits there coming to terms with some hard truths. Like the fact that the Pez candy actually does taste better if it comes out of the dispenser for some reason. And the dad takes this time to think about what life would be like if he shot his son. And look, I'm not a parent, as far as I know, but I'm sure that all parents at some point have a passing thought about, not necessarily killing their kid, but just, what if they weren't around anymore? And I'm sure some parents have that thought more frequently than others. I'm not judging. Anyway, some kind of alien Frisbee suddenly flies through the air and lands on him, digging into his head and neck, and you can add this onto the list of the many reasons why I hate camping. So now we're introduced to Sandy and Beth, as well as Tom and his friend Greg, who is actually an android who's never interacted with women before.
Would you say hello to her, please?
Hello. Hello.
So they all go off on their trip to the mountains and make a stop for some gas, while the girls use the ladies' room. But it's locked, so they have to use the men's room, and that's when they run into Fred and some writing on the wall.
What's that mean?
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, Sandy. And back in those days, the wall of the men's room was like the one place where men felt they could express themselves without scrutiny. And I guess that all just went out the window now, didn't it? Thank you, Sandy. So Fred leaves, and yes, I understand that Fred is a Vietnam vet suffering from PTSD, but I don't think that should be an excuse for not washing your hands. Meanwhile, a troop of Boy Scouts and their Scoutmaster are walking around the area, but the Scoutmaster's compass starts going haywire, so he tells them all to go find a rock or a stick to bring home to their parents because, yeah, they totally want that. Again, not a parent, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, they don't want it. So the scout leader stumbles upon the father and son's Winnebago, and he figures that whoever is inside could help him. But of course he can't admit that he's lost. He has to come up with another reason as to why he needs help.
I've got some Cub Scouts down the way.
and my blisters are killing me.
See, right away, I would be able to tell that this man is lying, because nobody would be able to reach the rank of Scoutmaster without their blister badge. You might be able to get there without your chafing badge, but even that's a stretch. So the Scoutmaster tries to light a cigarette with some rocks, and I bet you can guess what happens next. The alien throws some Frisbees on him, and he's dead. And you know what? I actually think he deserved it. Yeah, because look, what was he trying to do? Start a fire. And what does Smokey the Bear say? I can't remember the words exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of, only you can prevent forest fires. Otherwise, I'm going to unholster my pistol and blow your brains out. So then the kids see the alien and start to run away. But they are so dead. I mean, yeah, they're running, but let's be honest here. They'll all be dead within 10 minutes. Which is not a bad way to start the movie, I might add. Because, as I've mentioned multiple times recently, you want to grab the attention of the audience? Kill some kids. So the foursome finally gets to the mountain, and while Tom and Beth are making out, Greg and Sandy go for a walk. But by the time they get back, Tom and Beth are nowhere to be found, and they stumble upon a shack, which says it's for the water department. And this is something I think the movie does really well. Shocking reveals. Keep in mind, this movie came out in 1980, before a lot of the typical horror movie tropes had really been established. So watching this now, based on the buildup of them walking to the shack, you would probably expect that they open the door, but there's nothing inside. And then maybe there's a jump scare when they turn around. But not this movie. Nope, the shack is full of dead bodies. And I just found it to be so unexpected. I thought it was a great reveal. Also, side note, this shack was actually the only thing that was built for this movie. And it's not built out of wood. It was built out of Celotex, which is like a fiberboard, and they just glued the whole thing together instead of using nails. And the reason for that is because later in the movie, they blow up the shack, and you don't want to have nails becoming projectiles in the explosion. So they run all the way back to the van, and suddenly an alien Frisbee lands on the windshield. Greg checks the glove box, but they're all out of trusty alien repellent. Greg then turns the key, but the van doesn't start. And I think this is one horror movie trope that I would like to see updated at some point. Because you know what's scarier than the car not starting? The car starting, you drive for a few minutes, and then all the warning lights on the dash start lighting up one by one. Especially if it's one you've never seen before. Some of these would freak me the f*** out if they popped up. Like, what is this? Rainy wind blowing over water? Finally, they arrive at a bar, and Greg is like, all right, I'm going in there to ask for help. You stay here, because, I mean, yeah, we just got attacked by some kind of alien creature, but whatever is in that bar could be 10 times worse. So Greg goes in and tells them to call the police. Meanwhile, Sandy sees the alien, or some guy with just a really big head. Either way, she takes off running, and either way, it's kinda rude. At one point, she runs into Jack Palance's character, Joe, who takes her back to the bar, and Joe is dead set on killing this alien because, well, there's probably not much to do around these parts except drink and shoot at things, and this alien sounds like a real challenge. So they take him to the shed so he can see all the bodies, and he's like, yeah, this is where the alien keeps his food, so he's bound to come back here, and when he does, we'll be waiting. And they're like, are you crazy? We're not waiting for shit. So they leave, and at one point they have to jump off a bridge, and then they stumble upon this house with no one inside. So naturally, they break in and help themselves to dry clothes and coffee. Greg tells Sandy to take a nap while he stays awake, putting as much caffeine in his body as he possibly can. At one point, Sandy gets up to find that Greg is now dead, and this is where we have the reveal of the alien. This is probably my favorite part of the movie for a few reasons. I feel it's very effective. I think this sudden reveal of the alien is even more unexpected than the scene with the shack that's full of dead bodies. And also, the first time I watched this movie, I felt like I had seen this before, and then I realized I had. It's Psycho. This, of course, couldn't just be a coincidence, and sure enough, when I watched the movie again with the director's commentary on, he mentioned that this scene was supposed to be an homage to Psycho. And then he said, which means basically that I just stole it. He also mentioned that this was one of the things that he changed from the original script, because in the original script, both of these characters survive at the end of the movie, but the director said he felt it would be better to have Sandy fight the alien without Greg. I also find this part kind of funny. Sandy runs outside and then hides in this room, sees the alien, smiles because I guess she was relieved that the alien didn't see her, and then it smashes through the window. And based on everything that just happened, I don't think I would be able to feel an ounce of relief for a second, even if the alien left the area, because the owners of that house could be back at any minute. And I mean, yeah, I could blame the dead guy on the alien, but I'm not going to be able to come up with a good excuse as to why I took their clothes. So that'll be awkward. But it's a good thing Joe comes to the house and shoots at the alien. And then he's like, all right, let's get out of here and go back to the shack. And she's like, are you out of your goddamn mind? And he's like, no, I rigged it up with explosives. It's totally safe. You'll love it. The conclusion to this movie is kind of funny because Joe runs at the alien to try and get him to get close to the shack. And I just love the way he just starts running and just screams out, alien! Alien! Now, in this scene, both Joe and Fred approach the alien, but the director didn't have enough time to shoot the reverse angle. So in these shots, this is actually the director dressed up as Martin Landau and Jack Palance and mimicking their movements the best that he could. That's how they got these angles. The alien in this movie was played by Kevin Peter Hall, and he actually went on to play the Predator along with several other characters in other movies. Now, in the original script, the alien's weapon was a bow and arrow, but the director changed it to the alien Frisbee things. And I think that ended up being a very important change because I think it's something that's really unique to the movie. I really liked the design of the alien. I think they did a great job with it. I think the makeup was really well done. Now, the majority of this movie takes place at night, and I've covered a ton of low-budget movies where they've tried to shoot day for night and it ends up looking like crap. But this was all shot actually at night, which leads me to one of the things that I like most about this movie, how it was shot, because the cinematography is excellent. The DOP for Without Warning was Dean Cundy, who is an incredibly talented cinematographer. He's worked on a ton of movies, many of which you've probably seen, such as Jurassic Park, the Back to the Future trilogy, The Thing, Halloween, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Big Trouble in Little China, the list goes on and on. Anyways, I found Dean's work on Without Warning to be really impressive because even though the movie was low budget, he still did a great job with what he had, and he utilized some pretty interesting techniques. The Blu-ray for this movie has a featurette with Dean talking about making the movie, and as a side note, this is why I always recommend this stuff to people who are interested in filmmaking, because DVD commentaries and featurettes can provide a wealth of information and some really cool filmmaking tips. Like I said, a lot of this movie takes place at night, and this can be very challenging when you're shooting in a large area where it's very dark, because in those situations, aside from just lighting the talent, you have to find a way to light the background. Otherwise, it will just be the character standing against black. There will be no depth to it. So what Dean did is he would put lights behind trees and off to the side, and then waft fog into the scene. And what's smart about this is the moisture in the fog will reflect the light. So you get kind of a dynamic background, and there's depth to it because now you have these moving layers of atmosphere, and it creates this ominous mood. There's movement going on in the scene aside from just the actors. It's visually interesting. The score for this movie was done by Dan Wyman, who was actually recommended to the director by Dean Cundy because Dan had worked in the music department on Halloween and The Fog, which were two other movies that Dean was the cinematographer for. Now, I think for being a low-budget film, this movie has some great elements, and I think they did a good job with it, but overall, I do feel the movie drags in the middle. The threat of the alien is established very early on, but once the characters reach the bar, I think the movie loses the suspense and doesn't really recapture the feeling of impending doom until after the full alien reveal later on. Now, obviously, Predator and Without Warning are two very different movies, but I feel that Predator really took the core concept of the alien hunter and fully realized it, because aside from being an action movie, Predator is a survival sci-fi horror movie. The characters are trapped in the forest, being hunted down by a creature that they can't really see, using a variety of high-powered alien weapons. The feeling of danger and sudden death is constant from the moment the Predator is established, and I feel that Without Warning didn't have as much suspense and tension that it could have had. So once this movie was finished, a distribution deal was made with American International Pictures for a theatrical release. But a few weeks after the deal, American International Pictures was bought by Filmways Pictures, and they didn't want to release the movie. So the director, Graydon Clark, had to threaten a lawsuit, and eventually they released it, and according to him, the movie went on to be pretty successful. I wouldn't recommend the movie to everybody, but I think I would recommend it to those who are really into filmmaking, those who are really into Predator, and also there's a few things the movie really has going for it. Jack Palance is awesome in it. Martin Landau is great too. The alien, I love the look of the alien. I think the makeup they did on the head and the face and all that, I think it looks great. And also the reveal of the alien. That whole psycho scene, I think is great. I want to thank all of my supporters on Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, and my YouTube channel members. I want to thank all of you for a great year. This is my last episode of 2024. I will be back in 2025 with all new episodes, but that's pretty much it for this one, and I'll see you all next time. Okay, so look, I know the wig doesn't look like his hair, but this was the best I could do under the circumstances. And I didn't have a gold chain, so this, I was scrambling looking for anything to put around my neck. I found this in the basement of my house. It's been there since I moved in, and it's really rusty, so I think I'm taking a risk just wearing it for this skit. So cut me some slack on this one. Last video, there was a mistake. I said Georgian chants instead of, I think it's Gregorian chants. Here's the thing. I'm like Ron Burgundy with this thing. I just read whatever I write down on here, and sometimes I'll just misspell, or I'll misspell something, and I'll just read it like that. Or there's the possibility that I had no idea that they were called Gregorian chants. I just looked that up and saw Gregorian and just wrote Georgian and said it. Sorry, I'm not up on my my chant music. Not very knowledgeable when it comes to that. But I tried to sound like I knew what I was talking about, and it bit me in the ass. And that's why you should never try to learn.